Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Chesterton's Jest, where we shine an unflinching light on the joys, contradictions, and crises within today's Catholic Church and culture. If you're here for faith, wit, and a little righteous fire, you're in the right place. Smash that like button, share this video with your fellow troublemakers, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Now then, shall we begin? Our topic, up for discussion today. After Vatican II, scandal, authority, and the line that was drawn. Chapter 1, Vatican II and the opening of the fault line. The Second Vatican Council was a legitimate pastoral council of the Catholic Church. That fact must be stated plainly, because to deny it is to deny the Church's indefectibility and Christ's promise to remain with her until the end of time. Yet, legitimacy does not guarantee prudence, nor does pastoral intent guarantee clarity. Vatican II altered not the deposit of faith, but the Church's mode of expression, favouring dialogue over definition, tone over precision, and pastoral openness over doctrinal finality. That shift created a vulnerability the Council Fathers did not fully anticipate. Into that vulnerability stepped modernism, not as an explicit doctrine, but as a method. Meaning became elastic, teaching became suggestive. Texts capable of being read in continuity with tradition were increasingly read against it. What the Church meant came to depend less on what she clearly said and more on how the subject felt it should be applied. This was not apostasy, it was erosion. Chapter 2. Why Lefebvre was right to be scandalized. It was in this context that Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre was scandalized, and he was right to be. His objections were not rooted in nostalgia or personal ambition, but in a genuine fear that the Church's immune system had been weakened. He saw that ambiguity, once normalized, would be weaponized, and that doctrinal clarity, once surrendered, would not be easily recovered. History has been uncomfortably kind to that diagnosis, but Lefebvre was wrong in how he responded. By consecrating bishops without papal mandate, he crossed a line the Church could not affirm without undermining her own structure of authority. In attempting to defend tradition, he set a dangerous precedent that fidelity could be preserved apart from obedience. That move could not be blessed, even if the anxiety that provoked it was understandable. Chapter 3. The SSPX as a symbolic line in the sand. From that moment on, however, something irreversible occurred. The SSPX became, rightly or wrongly, a symbolic line in the sand for a growing number of Catholics. For priests, families, and converts, it came to represent refusal rather than rebellion. Refusal to surrender doctrinal clarity, refusal to reduce the liturgy to mere assembly, refusal to treat moral teaching as negotiable. Over time, many of the faithful granted the SSPX a practical validation it may not fully possess in strict ecclesiological terms. That validation did not arise from ideology, but from hunger. St. John Paul II acknowledged the validity of SSPX priestly orders, and for many Catholics struggling to remain anchored amid confusion, that recognition became good enough, not as a theological resolution, but as a lifeline. Chapter 4. Rome's quiet admission. At the same time, Rome itself implicitly acknowledged that something had gone wrong. The creation and protection of communities such as the FSSP and other traditional fraternities was not accidental. It was a tacit admission that treasures once assumed to be secure, reverence, metaphysical clarity, liturgical depth, had been mishandled in the post-conciliar period. These groups did not exist to protest the Church, but to safeguard what the Church herself once took for granted. They were not signs of rupture, but of repair. Yet their very necessity confirmed that the fault line opened after Vatican II had not healed itself. Chapter 5. Francis and the normalization of confusion. Pope Francis inherited this fractured landscape and did not heal it. Whatever his intentions, his pontificate normalized ambiguity and intensified division. Statements required clarification. Pastoral exceptions multiplied. Discipline varied wildly by diocese. Catholics were repeatedly told that doctrine had not changed, even as its application dissolved into inconsistency. The faithful were not rebellious, they were bewildered. This is why the detractors of Francis did not disappear with his death. Their concern was never merely about personality or tone, but about trajectory. Chapter 6. Pope Leo XIV and the Instinct for Continuity. Pope Leo XIV enters this moment formed entirely within the post-Vatican II Church. His instincts are pastoral, stabilizing, and deeply cautious of open conflict. He appears convinced, perhaps rightly, that another era of internal warfare could be fatal. His approach emphasizes continuity, listening, consultation, and calm. He lowers the temperature. He avoids sharp lines. That instinct is not wicked, but it is insufficient if left alone. The Church's crisis is no longer primarily one of heat, but of meaning. What many Catholics are asking for is not severity, but clarity, not rupture, but correction. Chapter 7. The Shadow of the Ape. This is where Fulton Sheen's warning about the ape of the Church presses with force. The fear is not that the Church will openly deny Christ, but that she will increasingly resemble him externally while softening his demands internally. Mercy without repentance, inclusion without conversion, dialogue without truth. A church that functions smoothly while quietly forgetting what it exists to proclaim. The SSPX, the FSSP, and similar fraternities now occupy an uncomfortable role. They are not the Church's future, but they have become signs of what many fear is being lost. They represent, at minimum, a refusal to let the line disappear entirely. Chapter 8. The Test of this Pontificate. Pope Leo's task is narrower and harder than managing factions. He must demonstrate that orthodoxy does not require disobedience, and that obedience does not require doctrinal silence. He must show that Vatican II can be interpreted without surrender to modernism, that tradition can be defended without schism, and that clarity is not cruelty. If he can do that, if he can name the erosion, correct it, and restore confidence without repudiating the Church herself, he may yet surprise everyone. If he cannot, then continuity will become stagnation, calm will become silence, and the line Lefebvre drew in error will continue to attract those who no longer trust Rome to draw it herself. That is the test of this pontificate, and it cannot be postponed forever. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed today's video and share our passion for defending the true faith with a touch of humor, smash that like button. Share this video with your fellow troublemakers and subscribe so you never miss an episode. As Chesterton once said, a madman is not someone who has lost his reason. A madman is someone who has lost everything except his reason. So, let's keep our reason and our faith intact together. Thanks for listening. God bless you, and may the good Lord be praised.